Welcome to Faith Fondue, a podcast featuring author and speaker Haley DeMaria and teacher and blogger Ann Strickers. Faith Fondue will feature a melting pot of topics, ignited by a flame, our faith, and guided by the Holy Spirit. It's the week of December 5th, the second Sunday in Advent, the Sunday of Love, and it has been a heck of a week for Notre Dame football fans, culminating today with an invitation to the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl on January 1st against the Cowboys of Oklahoma State. And we could spend our entire episode talking about Notre Dame football, but let's make sure we stay true to our name, Faith Fondue, and talk about a melting pot of topics. Ann, how was your week?
Thanks, Haley. Looking forward to talking about, things other than college football. I mean, part of me is like, I'm part of the problem. There's so many problems in college football in terms of like the money and it as a demonstration of what we value, and me like spending as much time thinking about it is part of the problem. So I'm glad we will be talking about that. Okay. We will also be talking about your son's end of the season banquets, some traditions that you and your husband, Jamie, have. I'm going to share a Christmas story, maybe a little commentary on Hallmark movies. And we'll talk a little bit about the gospel for the week. And I have a new read from Matthew Kelly, The Generosity Habit. So, Haley, where would you like to start? Where do you want to throw where's the dart on the dartboard going?
Oh my gosh, what a week, right? I'm sure your phone was blowing up as much as mine was with the news of Brian Kelly leaving for LSU, departing Notre Dame, the former head coach there. And then, of course, ending this Friday with the appointment of our defensive coordinator, Marcus Freeman, to the head coach. But, you know, the crazy thing about news like that is, you know, life still goes on, right? Like we still have to work. We still have events we have to do at night, responsibilities, at a time when you really could get consumed by social media. But again, there's a lot that we can talk about. Here's the one thing I'll say about this week. I just kept thinking about the student athletes, the players, what that roller coaster of a week must have been like for them on their last full week of classes. You know, these are students, and their lives were completely disrupted, as much as it seems like they're very thrilled with the outcome of, you know, who was appointed as their coach. My heart just really goes with them. So that's really where my head was primarily in terms of that. But fun week for us. Edward, they had the end of the season water polo banquet, as you mentioned. I know we've mentioned banquets before and talked about, you know, how do you truly honor a team? It was fun, you know, as a mom of a senior who's graduating. You've attended these banquets for 4 years now, and I think most parents, you know, when their child is a freshman, sophomore, or junior, you kind of look to the seniors and think, oh my gosh, what will that be like when my child gets there? And, you know, it was not, it seemed perfect and exactly what you would want it to be, or what I would want it to be, which was just a honest recognition of what the team has done. And that doesn't always happen in sports, right? Yeah. Coaches can be subjective. They can, you know, seasons cannot go the way you want them to. So I have to say it was a pretty perfect ending for, you know, his career and his water polo time. But it was interesting. You know, I had several younger moms of younger children text me and say, how did you not cry the whole time? How did you do this? And I thought, you know, it was just, it was perfect. It ended, I think, the way you would want it to, which is just genuine. And you don't always get that in sports. So
that's awesome.
That was kind of fun.
Compliment to the program, and just a gift for your son and for the families in attendance. I think that's great.
Yeah. High school sports can be wacky.
You know, and I'm not surprised that you're thinking of the student athlete, just having been a D1 athlete. However, like, I don't know, like, from what I've heard from a lot of players at Notre Dame, like, they actually didn't go there because of Brian Kelly. And I do think with a program that size, I mean, it's very possible. Like, I know for a fact Lou Holt didn't know all his players, and they set the tone, and there's no doubt about it. Like, the head coach has such a huge impact. But I do think with a team of that size, as long as athletes have a connection with one coach in particular, right? I think that that's essential. So I realize like the domino goes down and Brian Kelly could have taken everyone with him. So in that sense, it's like a waiting game. But then when we see the outcome, but like Kyle Hamilton and a number of them who did their emergency podcast were like, we came here for the education. We came here for the opportunities that Notre Dame is going to provide. And that was really good to hear, because it's like any program is bigger than the coach.
For sure.
Any program.
For sure.
And, we put a lot of money, like I said, into that coaching position because they set the tone. But, and they are describing Marcus Freeman as this player's coach, but there's all different kinds of coaches. And, there's also different levels of investment for players and relationships with the coach. So it is, if anything, a good case study, right? And,
absolutely.
Hearing what people think. And I mean, the different reactions I think were fascinating. People have said, what do you think of Coach Freeman? And I said, well, I'm excited. I support him. And I said, I will always support the head coach until he or she provides me a reason to otherwise. Like, that's how I feel as an athlete, as a sportsman, as, a granddaughter of a coach, as a coach myself. Like, you should support your coach until, again, you have reason to support otherwise. So this is a great opportunity. It's a new era. We'll just, it's exciting.
And you're absolutely right. It was refreshing to hear. I still think it was a tumultuous week for the student athletes. However, it was refreshing to hear them say that their connection to Notre Dame is Notre Dame and not Brian Kelly. Because it means that Notre Dame recruited the right kind of guys, right? They clearly recruited kids who wanted to be at Notre Dame. And so, that's a kudos to, the recruiting that's been done over the past several years. And, you're right. I had a different experience, obviously much different than most athletes had today, but we didn't have a bunch of assistant coaches. So, our head coach was our coach, and that was my connection to the program. Compared to, I would imagine that most, on a team that's so large like football, your, really close personal connection is probably with, your position coach. I don't know that. I'm not a football player. I don't have a football player, but I can see where that might be a little different as well. But the players seem happy. I thought, it was, Notre Dame does things like this very well. Losing a coach is hard. Losing a coach unexpectedly was probably really hard. But I think at the end of the week, we were talking, a lot's changed since we last taped. But I think we're in, a better place right now than perhaps we were even last Sunday. So that's got to make everybody feel good.
Yeah.
So
hope for the best.
Always. And speaking of places, so Jamie and I, my husband used to work in New York City. We live in Annapolis, Maryland, but for 10 of the years, and we've been here for 18 years, 10 of those years he worked in New York City and would go up almost every week. So we used to spend a lot of time in New York City, and we would always take a trip this first week in December. I would just go up with him, for the few days he was working there, and we would go see shows. We are both huge Broadway fans.
Fun.
And, I have family that live up there, and not a big shopper, but I love to just walk around and browse and spend time in the city at Christmas. And we couldn't do it last year. We didn't even do it the year before that because he had just left his job. So we didn't make it up there. And so it had been a few years since we made that, annual trip of using Amtrak points to hop on the train and hotel points to stay at a hotel. And we made that quick trip up. We went back to Broadway, saw a show, spent, a day in the city, and it just felt normal. There's a lot of things in life right now that don't seem normal, but it was a nice little break for us, but also made us very hopeful. Certainly last week, the first week of Lent was hope, and, made us very hopeful. So, even with this crazy variant that's coming up, that we can return to a little bit of normal in the things that we enjoy. So kind of a fun little getaway for us.
No, it sounds like a great holiday tradition. And what show did you see? I'm always curious to hear.
So we went and saw Six, the musical. And it's about the 6 wives of Henry VIII. So
Oh yeah. Okay.
yep, it had played in London and was scheduled to open on Broadway in March of 2020. So I had wanted to see it. We were planning to go as soon as it came to the States, and of course had to wait about a year and a half to get there. But it was great. It's very clever. It's very fun. It's very modern.
Hmm.
Tells a lot of history, but it's probably
Okay.
not for everybody. I loved it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as a history major, that makes sense.
Yes.
And yeah, it's great that Broadway's back, and just the talent and the voices of people is tremendous. So, what a great holiday tradition. That sounds really fun. You mentioned shopping, and my parish has a women's group. It's actually one of the reasons I divided my time between St. Dominic's and St. Vincent de Paul, but this women's group was one of the reasons I kind of, again, like sway towards St. Vincent de Paul, that in the 8 a.m. time that I really like for Sunday Mass. And they do a fundraiser every year. And it's basically go to these stores, people will be pouring champagne, and, there's cookies, and any percentage of what you buy goes to the scholarship fund run by the women's club, and then there's dinner afterwards. So we did not have it last year, we did it this year, and it's just like interesting to think of shopping as like a hobby or as an interest, like you said,
Hmm.
because yeah, you go, you browse. Part of it is just having this spirit of, yeah, I'll try it on, and even though you don't think you'll get it, and sometimes then you end up deciding to purchase something, but it is like, it is something to think about, like, how you engage in that activity. Like, are you the fun spirited person
Hmm.
who, does try on things? And some people just buy a lot, but again, you don't want to just not, just be totally passive either. So it's a fun way to get together. And yeah, the city looks great, with lights and whatnot. So it's fun.
That is great. I'm a big Christmas light fan, so even just turning off the lights and walking around the city
Yeah.
and seeing all the
Yeah.
Christmas lights.
Well, I have a Christmas story for
Great.
our listeners. It's related to what we've talked about before. So I don't remember the context for how this came up, but I had mentioned I have a neighbor, and he and I had like a confrontation about 8 years ago. It was over a parking spot. I live on a very commercial street. In fact, there's tons of lights, and there's tons of parking problems around the holidays because people come to this part of San Francisco to go shopping up and down. And my apartment is literally on the street, Fillmore Street. So we really got into it. It was very heated.
I
I
re
might have been in the wrong, Haley.
I
I think I might have.
remember.
Yeah, I don't remember the gist of it, but I would see him all the time. He's not like the warmest person. Like some people's energy or like body language, like chill, relaxed, whatever. He generally seems pretty angry. I don't know what his perception of me is, but I try to look people in the eye, try to kind of smile. But anytime I would see this person, it was, uncomfortable. So last night I was heading out for a fundraiser event, and I saw him with his bicycle going to go into his building. And I thought, here we go. Cause I had seen him a couple times since the, episode. And so I just said to him, cause he's working on opening the gate. And I said, I see you all the time, and I just want to apologize for whatever happened 8 years ago. I said, I'm so sorry that happened. And I don't feel great about it. So please know that I regret that we had that confrontation. And I don't know exactly what he said right then, but he says to me, "You're a high school teacher, aren't you?" And I said, "I am." He's like, "So am I." And I said, "No way." And he's like, "Yeah, I teach at Balboa High School." And I said, "Well, God bless you." And he said, "No, no, no, God bless you." And then we just started talking about the challenge of teaching right now, in this post-COVID world, and like our weeks before Thanksgiving, like virtual and on virtual, whatnot. And then he's like, he told me his name, and he put his hand out to shake my hands. And I like literally took both of my hands and like shook his hand. It was so nice. And I just said, I'm really glad we got to meet you. So I don't know if I would have done that if it wasn't for our show or prayer or something, but yeah, I'm not gonna say he's coming over for dinner next week. I mean, that's not the kind of thing, but I now have a neighbor that I know. So
So Anne, that's amazing. I love hearing that. Good for
yeah,
you. And good for
yeah,
him. And I wonder how he knew you were a
I know.
teacher.
What's that?
I wonder how he knew you were a teacher.
Yeah, I mean, good question. I don't know, if I have no idea if I said something, or I mean, it's pretty obvious when you have a backpack every day that says St. Francis Athletics and the schedule you keep. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I didn't think to say, how did you know that? So yeah, but now we're neighbors, maybe
Now,
friends.
now you're
Who knows?
neighbors. Well, and now you don't have to kind of
Avoid them.
yeah, or dread running into them, right?
Not at
So,
all. No, I look forward to seeing him next time.
yeah, that's
So
great. Well, what a gift he gave you then, right? Because that might
he
not have.
did. He did. I'd like him to know that. So yeah. So for people who hold on to something like that, I mean, you know, I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan, and the last episode, there's this apology that totally goes in a different direction, and you have to be prepared that somebody could give an apology like that. It's between Ted and Nate, and Nate's words are pretty biting. Um, and I don't think, I mean, I don't know. As the viewer, I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. So I think it's fair to say you have to be prepared that somebody's not going to be. So this really was a gifted encounter. I don't take it for granted. So
No, absolutely. Well, I think it's a good lesson for us too, right? To
mhm.
think how good you feel now because he made that outreach, and where in our lives can we make that outreach for
Yeah,
others? To
yeah,
hopefully put ourselves in that position of being a good neighbor. He talk
yeah,
about living the
yeah.
gospel right there out on the street, right?
That's true.
Probably from the place you least expect it. But God works in mysterious ways, and at this point, He worked through someone who
Yeah,
um, you least expected it from.
yeah. No, I'm glad. I'm really glad about it. It's good to be able to tell good news, because there's enough going on in our world right now that's just really hard to talk about those things. So small victories.
Well, there is, and life is, especially as the of this variant comes and goes, and we don't know what it's going to mean, and it's hard to watch the news these days. Whatever side you're on and whatever you believe, just the news is so skewed. I even find it difficult to listen to because it too is so subjective. There's just not a lot of objectivity. But there is one thing that I think everybody loves or should love if they don't, and that is a good game of bingo. So there is an event at my son's high school. It's
I
Mother's
thought you were going to say candy corn, Haley.
Oh
Sorry. I
no,
just,
no, 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 no. That's
yeah.
about as divisive as
Okay.
politics.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
No, bingo. So there is the Mothers Club at Mount St. Joe, my boys' high school, has an annual bingo game. Of course, again, last year it was postponed because of COVID,
Uh,
because they probably get about 1,000 women jammed into the
yep.
cafeteria. They had to move it to the gym this year. Playing bingo. It is BYOB. It is BYO food.
Oh, interesting.
It
Mm-hmm.
is just a rockin' good time. And
That's great.
all the money that is raised goes towards the seniors post prom party. They do a large overnight till 5 a.m. kind of lock in after prom to keep the kids safe. But it's just there's something about a game that is just chance and
Totally. Right.
being with friends and dressing up in kind of my silly Christmas gear and just getting together um,
Mm-hmm.
in a very simple way. This is not, of course, any school event takes a
Yeah.
lot to be put on, especially when you have 1,000 people there. But just kind of that simple bingo game that anybody can
Yeah.
play. I've played bingo with my
Yeah.
kids since they were 2.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
Sometimes the basics are the most fun.
Yeah.
It is
You're right.
truly my favorite event that they have up at St.
Yeah.
Joe. As soon as it sells out every year within days, as soon as the
Wow.
tickets are available, I buy a table because I know I can fill it, and I look forward to it every year. In fact, I have a good
Yeah.
friend. She goes with me every year. Her kids don't even go to that school, but she wouldn't miss it. Her husband took a trip to Florida this weekend, and she said, "I can't go with you. I'm going to bingo."
That's well, I like that it's BYO food, because I
Yes,
imagine people bring things to share. Would be my
absolutely.
and BYOB, which is good. My grandmother really loved bingo, and she was smart as a whip. So I didn't totally understand her love of bingo, because we played a lot of cards and she was very good at that. So yeah, like you're right, the game of chance, but it's about the companionship. And
Yes.
that's such a Catholic school thing, Catholic school culture. And it's really disappeared in the city. St. Ignatius, where I used to work, had Monday night bingo, and the kids who were on tuition assistance had to work it or something. But the priest that I talked about last week that died, his funeral, who's this Friday, he was in charge of bingo. I mean, he was at every bingo. Every Monday, and he knew all those people. And one of the stories I love about Tony is he'd be giving the Eucharist to kids at Mass, and he'd be like, you need to get the wine, be sure to get the blood of Christ. Like, he would just tell people as they were coming up. And then he'd be like, I saw your grandmother Monday, bingo, body of Christ. And he would just always like give these, side notes, but one of them was always about bingo, because you do get a lot of people at it, and it's a lot of retired people, and it gets them out of the house, and they can, be together and have fun and have a chance at winning. That's really what it is.
Well, and I think you hit it on the head, and I think this is what I truly love about it, and I hadn't really thought of it in this way. It is the sense of community. It is this table that I have, and it's a game that you can be social during, right? It's not, it is a game of chance.
Yeah,
so it's not
right.
like a card game that you have to pay attention to, or a chess game where there's strategy and you have to think. There is no strategy in bingo except for making sure you don't miss a number that's called. So it is the community aspect.
Requires something.
Which does. It really does, especially with the challenging, microphone sound system they had, which most Catholic schools have tough sound systems, but they had the board up. Anyway, and that is, of course, such a hallmark of Catholic schools, right? It's what we love about, the schools we work at, the schools that we've attended, is that sense of community. So it is the bingo, but it really is the whole experience. So
there you go, Mount St. Joe.
Yeah,
it's great.
It was very fun.
Yeah.
So
it'd be fun at the holidays too, because you could really, with decorations and music. I mean, certain times of the year, my parish does a disco bingo and like interrupts it with like, I don't know, disco stuff. I wasn't keen on it, but I think the opportunity for a Christmas bingo is exceptional. So
absolutely. If you ever find yourself on the East Coast, first week in December, you know
Hey,
where I'll be.
Yeah, you will. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Olympic Club bingo night. That's going to be next. That would just be, that would be a drunk fest. So, yeah.
Well, time to move on to the spiritual stew.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, is there any beer in that stew? My mom always put beer in our beef stew.
No, but there was some beer consumed last night. Not at our table. We're more wine drinkers, but beer and stew is pretty good. That would be more of like a stout, I think.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah. Can you put red wine in stew?
Sure. It makes it more of like a burgundy. Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so what's cooking in your spiritual stew here?
So I mentioned last week so my spiritual stew this week comes from the Gospel of Luke. I know we read Luke, or Luke was read to us this, today at Mass. It's a little bit of a different reading. So I had mentioned last week, one of the reasons that Advent was such a treasure time in my life and in my childhood was the Advent program that my mother had put together that we practiced and participated in our home. So I still have my mother's handwritten program that I still use. It's about to fall apart. I should probably type it up so I have it, but I still love reading from her handwriting. So I will probably always keep that copy. But the reading for this week, the second Sunday in Advent, it's the week of love. The first week of Advent is hope. Second week is love. It's from Luke 1:26 through 33. And I won't read it, but it's the passage where the angel Gabriel appears to Mary and says, these two phrases that really jump out at us, I think, because we hear them in so many other areas of our faith life. And that is, the first is the Lord is with thee, right? The Gabriel comes down and tells Mary, God is with you. I think of those words a lot. They're in the Hail Mary as well. But saying, God is with her. That's powerful when you really think about it. I mean, of course, we know God was with Mary, but when you really think about that, God is with you, with you. I mean, that's kind of what we all need to want and feel all the time. And then, of course, he says the words, do not be afraid. And I think I mentioned this either last week or the week before. How could you not be afraid if an angel is showing up in front of you? or if God appeared to you, I think we would all be terrified. I hope we would be open, of course, to seeing that and listening to what they were saying. But that idea of not being afraid. But one of the things that I love about this Advent program is, and maybe it's just Advent in general, the themes are so universal. The theme of hope that we talked about last year, and I'll share more of this as we move through Advent. But part of the program, there's a reading, there's a song we sing, there's a prayer at the end, and the prayer is the same every year. And it is amazing to me that the prayer is applicable to our life right now every year. So this is a prayer that was written, by my mom, or maybe she took it from somewhere. All I again have is it in her handwriting that she wrote 40 some years ago. And yet every time I read it, every year, whether it's last week hope, this week love, next week is joy, and then we move on to gifts, those prayers relate to where we are today in our lives. And I think that's what I love about it. I think that's what I love about certain priests when they preach at Mass. That's what a really good homily is taking the word of God, taking the gospel and making it applicable to our lives today. This Advent program definitely does that. So the idea of just remembering God is with us and do not be afraid. Boy, if we could remember just those two simple passages, it's hard to live by them, but boy, if we could and remember it and really live that way, we'd be a lot better off.
Yeah. Yeah. Two great messages. Thank you for those. God is with us. That is Emmanuel, right? That's what the name literally means. So if you want to just pray with Emmanuel or with the phrase, I think that's a great way to pray. What does that mean? We see that for Joseph when he's visited. Angels always have that message. The opening message is "Be not afraid," and it's the first words of John Paul II's papacy when he took the the balcony in Rome. Right? He said, "Be not afraid." It's an interesting message, isn't it? Because I don't know, somebody like her faith. I've had things in my life, for example, like I think about my heart incident, like when it was happening, I wasn't afraid. I never thought I was going to die. I wasn't afraid. And then sometimes fear kicks in later. Do you know what I mean? And so sometimes I would think for a woman this faith-filled, there probably would have been confusion, but I would imagine she's so close with God. And then somehow at some point, it's like, at some point be like, wait, is this not right? Is this normal? And then to go back to those words, be not afraid. It's like, okay. And I can't speak for Mary's experience, but it'd be interesting just to kind of, put ourselves in that gospel reading to see how might we feel. And
right.
What are times in our lives where we have been afraid, and when are times where we haven't been afraid? And maybe we should have been, so, what a beautiful reading too to choose. Absolutely. That's why we love Advent.
That is why we love Advent. Yeah, and it would be interesting. I should be a great conversation to have with my mom. Where did this come from? Did you pick the readings? Is it? Yeah, I'll have to. Maybe that'll be part of my melting pot. My takeaway is
I love it.
Learning more about where the genesis of that.
It sounds like a great resource. So great that I don't know, more people should, have it. So props to your mom. Shout out for your mom here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Go mom. In our spiritual, what I'll contribute to the stew in addition to the stout is, this is a new book by Matthew Kelly. It's called The Generosity Habit. And it's just about the power of generosity. And I just thought it was such a positive message. And it's talking about how generosity is good for you. And one of the things is that it's the next beauty trend. It says philosophers and poets have been suggesting that there is a link between moral and physical beauty for thousands of years, which I thought was super interesting because I've had, I think I've talked about this, the emphasis on beauty in our culture, okay, I went walking with a friend yesterday. I'm pretty sure she had Botox. Okay. And she looks good. I mean, I'm not going to say she doesn't. And so then I got my hair cut. Okay. So I'm spending a lot of money. Like, I'm not throwing my friend under the bus. And I said to the hair, stylist, have you had Botox? She's like 3 times. And she told me about, what she did and why she did it. And how it's diminishing returns in a sense, because once you get it, you need to, get the injection all the time. But my point here is that's just one of, I mean, this, like hundreds of things that we can spend money on, right? For our physical beauty. If it's not your hair highlighted, straightened, I mean, you name it, right? We get fillers. She was talking about fillers. I learned about that. Do you know about fillers?
I know what they are. I've never
Yeah.
had them.
Yeah. I haven't either. I will not, I can say with confidence, I will not. Designer clothing, designer jewelry, right? But, to know that, but it's like, that's only, we always say this, it's only skin deep, right? And there is something about our worth, who we are as people, our inner beauty. And, it's the poets and the philosophers that are speaking of this. It's not, the people in social media that are, although I could contribute to social media by sharing that message. So lots of thoughts on generosity. And one of the ideas that I think is really true is that it's contagious. I do think it's contagious. For example, at that fundraiser I was at last night, they were asking people to give $100 to help tuition assistance. One person did it, then everybody at our table ended up doing it. I mean, it's something we could all do. It is contagious. So I appreciated reading that. And then there's just different ways to think of generosity, but it also talked about this quote from Mother Teresa, who we're both fans of. She said, never worry about numbers. Help one person at a time and always start with the person nearest you. And that was that generosity is unexpected and it's visionary. That's why that quote was there. So yeah, it's unexpected. That's the whole point. Like, someone's giving because they want to, there's a desire, there's a response. And if they give $5, if they give 100, like, it's not about the numbers, it's about the action. And of course she's talking about ministry to people. Who do we give to? The person next to you, which is, it's doable. So,
It's interesting. I've heard that quote before, as I know you have too, but I think I heard it a little differently. Um, I and I guess it could be taken really in any way, and maybe you weren't,
sure, right,
don't never
right.
worry
I was
about,
surprised in a way it was there. Yeah.
yeah, never worry about numbers. I'm not thinking that in terms of, monetary numbers. I'm thinking like, don't feel like you have to change the world. Don't feel like you have to, touch
Mm.
a
Yeah.
1,000 people or 100
Yeah.
people, right? You can just
Yeah.
make an
Yeah.
impact on one person. And that
Yeah.
is doing, the work that God wants us to do, right? You don't have to feel like you're changing the world. That can be
Yeah.
very overwhelming. Most people may not even have a desire to do that. But if you can make a difference in one person's life, that's as big a gift as, someone who does reach, tens or thousands of people. But it's a great reminder that it really is just about the generosity of spirit, that they really just want us to
Yeah.
be kind to one another, right? To show that love that we talk about, in Advent this week.
Yeah.
And if it's just the person next to us, for those who are married, being kind to your spouse, that doesn't always come, naturally or daily for some people. So just being kind and showing that love within your family makes a big difference, right? Being kind to
Talks about that.
your neighbor
Yep.
on the street, right?
Right. Right.
He was living out exactly what Mother Teresa is saying. He didn't have to, you know, change everybody and make an impact on everyone who was at the 49ers game. He made a difference in your life, and that will have that ripple effect. I completely agree and believe that generosity is contagious. There's that great commercial, and I don't even know what it's for. So I guess in that sense, it wasn't very good advertising because I don't remember the product. But it's the commercial. I'm sure you've seen it. They played it for a while where, someone's walking on a street and they see someone help somebody else out, and then they help someone and someone sees them. And it's kind of this snowball effect of when you see kindness, it inspires you to be kind. And boy,
Yeah.
couldn't our world use more of that.
Yeah.
So you never know, your neighbor being kind to you will make an impact on your life. Someone might have seen that kindness and, that might inspire them. So absolutely,
Yeah.
I believe that
Yeah.
generosity is contagious.
Yeah. So for anyone who's interested, it's called the generosity habit. And it has, generosity is good for you. It improves your physical health, improves your mood. Generous people live longer. It evokes gratitude and contentment. Generous people have better relationships. It
Mm.
makes us happy. It transforms the way we feel about ourselves. Generous people tend to have more friends.
Hmm.
Yeah. I feel like I'm going to read this to my students tomorrow. It stimulates a more positive outlook on life. It has a mysterious way of rewarding you tenfold. And I think, just to bring it full circle, I mean, that's, the workers in the vineyard. And at the end of the day, right, they are all paid the same wages. And some of them are angry about this. But the point is, like, the biblical notion of justice is that God's justice is overflowing. And it's not what we meet by a worldly standard. Like, yeah, those people at the end of the day also got, like, it was God was generous with them.
Mm-hmm.
Was he generous with the first people? I mean, I would imagine it doesn't say they were paid less than minimum wage. It's harder to be on that end. I would have been grumpy and upset too. But our paradigm for what is deserved or should be given is not God's, and that's the point of that reading. So, yes.
Well, which fits in with so much of what God does is it's his idea of generosity, not ours, right? It's his idea
Yeah.
of love, not ours. It's his concept of time, not ours.
Amen.
There's so many different ways that we clearly need to get the message. This is not our life. This is his, and it'd be a great thing to remember. So I think, for the melting pot, for the takeaways this week, I was thinking about the theme of love this week for Advent, to show
Right.
love
Yep.
in all my actions, in my words. Actions I can do, words, are usually pretty good, but I'm going to take it a step further and really try to show the love in my thoughts. And that's a challenge sometimes. There's things we think that we don't say, but those thoughts still, they're still a part of you, and certainly God knows what you're thinking. So I'm going to work on, very loving thoughts, and not being snarky in my thoughts,
It
and
hasn't
certainly
come
not
up in a
being.
while,
I know.
Haley. No, it's like such a good one.
It is. It is. So no snark anywhere. I'm really going to try to live this week just in a state of love. And I would imagine, I don't know this, I'll report back next week, that really focusing on that will probably lead to a more generous spirit.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think that's ultimately what God wants us to do, is live in a state of love. And then, that's going to flow out of us with that generous spirit. So that's my goal. It seems pretty lofty, but I'm going to give it a shot.
I think it's a worthy goal. And I think it's so fitting because, yeah, like you said, with the theme of Advent, what a great way when you're lighting your Advent wreath this week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think my takeaway is God is with us. God with God with you, God with anybody, but God is with us. I'm really going to pray with that. So thank you for sharing that. And what a perfect prayer during the Advent season. So yeah, and maybe after this, I don't know. Maybe it is part of Advent. Like, now that we've talked about it, went at the shopping spree or whatever event that I brought my old roommate, and I apologized to her for all the times I was not very clean. Okay. And I could have been a tidier roommate. I said, I want to apologize. And I want to just say, thank you for your patience with me, because we're going to have a house meeting, but we have some issues about cleanliness, and who does what. And in married life, you're on the same team, and when you're roommates, you're a little bit individual, but we share a common space. So it's a universal struggle, I'm sure. But I apologized to her then, so maybe that apology made way for this one. But it's good to reconcile relationships, because we carry the weight of them, whether we know it or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Including the relationship with your neighbor that you don't even really know. What a burden of,
Yeah, right?
yeah, what a burden that has
No.
been relieved there as well. So again, I think it all comes back to being loving in our thoughts and our words and our action, and having that generous spirit flow out, whether it comes in generosity of giving or giving, apologies and gratitude as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Anne,
So
have a great week. Hopefully, we won't have the roller coaster of a week that we did this past week.
I
Uh,
don't think we can. I don't think that's possible because
oh,
your
don't
phone and my
say
phone were
that.
blowing up, right? Because it was news. So yeah,
It
you're right.
it
Everything is
was,
possible.
but I think
Anything's possible. Yeah.
true. But I think we did a great job of focusing on where we wanted to focus in our podcast and not spending too much time on what truly we could have spent the entire time talking about. But let me tell you, my thoughts and would not have come out loving in my words. So I'm glad that we steered clear of that, and hopefully we're
That's
able
your goal.
we're
So
able to pass,
you're on
yeah,
the right track.
pass
Way to
on
go,
the
Haley.
pass on the message of love. So, Anne, have a great week.
You too, Haley.